friends, welcome back to our channel if you've seen our videos before, and if you're new, my name is Abby, and today I have a very exciting bookish announcement. So a while ago, my friends Nina and Heather and I were discussing our mutual love of the 1980s and 90s television classic Murder, She Wrote. If you're unfamiliar, it's a murder mystery show starring Angela Lansbury as Jessica Fletcher, a novelist who solves crime and is iconic while doing it. It's just a great, cozy show that Hope and I have been obsessed with during her recovery. So when I was talking with Nina and Heather about it, Nina's watching it for the first time and I'm so excited. We were chatting about how much we enjoy the show and we thought it would be super fun to run a readathon together inspired by the show. So welcome to the Murder, She Read readathon, a month-long readathon inspired by Murder, She Wrote. I am so excited! How is this readathon going to work, Abby? I am so glad that you asked. As I mentioned, this is a month-long readathon, so it will run from March 1st to March 31st, 2022, and the goal is to use the prompts to create your own imaginary episode of Murder, She Wrote. It's gonna be so cool! The prompts for this readathon fall into 4 categories: setting, sidekick, victim, and suspect. And the goal is to fulfill 1 prompt from each of those sections. Now this could be with 4 books, it could be with 10 books, it could be 1 or 2 books. It's really designed to be super flexible to your reading style, how much you read, what you read, all those good things. You can find all of the prompts in the description, but I am going to walk you through them right now and maybe give you some recommendations for some of them. So let's get started. So our first prompt category is obviously something that's very important to your imaginary episode: the setting. Where is your episode going to be set? There are 4 options in this category. So we've got Cabot Cove, New York City, Ireland, and Los Angeles. So if you want your episode to be set in Cabot Cove, Jess's hometown, the iconic murder capital of the East Coast, then you're going to read a book set in a small town. If you want your episode to be set in New York City, read a book that's set in a big city. If you want your episode to be set in Ireland, read a book with an international setting. I personally love the Ireland episodes. They're some of our favorites. There's one about every season or so, and they're so much fun. They're so much fun. And if you want your episode to be set in Los Angeles, read a book set in a fictional world. So those are your 4 options for the setting of your episode. And the next thing we have to pick is your sidekick. Now for this list, we have 6 of the guys that Jess teams up with the most, I feel, or at least are like the most iconic from the show, in my opinion. So you gotta figure out who's helping Jess solve the case. Our first option for sidekick is the legend, the icon, Dr. Seth Hazlitt. I love Seth. He might be my favorite character in the show. Like, it's either him or Jess. Jess probably edges him out just a bit, but I love Seth. If you want your episode sidekick to be Seth, read a book that's recommended by a friend. You can either take one of the recommendations that I'm about to share with you in this video or something that someone else has recommended to you. I think for me, for this readathon, I'm going to be reading The Rejected King by Courtney Keisel because this one has been recommended to me so many times by so many of my bookish friends. I don't know much about it, but I'm excited to find out. Your next option for a sidekick is Sheriff Amos Tupper, of course, Cabot Cove's original sheriff from the first few seasons of the show. He's kind of a bumbling sheriff. He needs Jess's help to solve his cases in most cases. So if you want Amos as the sidekick of your episode, read a book that you know is going to make you laugh. My recommendation for this, because it made me laugh a lot, is Frog Kisser by Garth Nix. This is a middle grade adventure story about Princess Anya, who has the ability to break curses with her magic assisted kisses. So she gets into all sorts of shenanigans. She has an evil stepmother and an evil stepfather, who's her stepmother's new husband, and it's a whole thing, and it's so much fun. There's adventure, there's talking dogs, and there's a ton of humor in this book. So this would be my recommendation if you're looking for Amos. This would also count as a fictional world. So there you go, see? Knocking 2 prompts out with 1 book. Your next option for sidekick is, of course, Grady Fletcher, Jessica's nephew. I love Grady. I genuinely do not understand how every episode he's in almost, he is accused of murder, because I don't know how anyone thinks he could pull any of this off. I really don't. If you want Grady as your sidekick for your episode, read a romance book. We all know Grady Fletcher's romantic history is fraught with turmoil. However, by the time he gets further on in the show, he does meet and marry Donna, and we're very happy for them. They're adorable. Love them so much. A romance that I really love that I think you might also love is Love You Truly by Susan L. Tuttle. This is a romance about a bachelor-style reality show. She doesn't want to be on the show. He's the bachelor. What will they do? It's actually really fun and fluffy and feel good, and I love it so much. I've read it several times, and it's always just like a comfort, cozy rom-com read for me, so that's definitely one I would recommend. Your next option for sidekick is, of course, Mort Metzger, the sheriff in Cabot Cove after Amos retires. He's from New York, so he's kind of expecting Cabot Cove to be just an easy ride. Obviously, it's not, because as I mentioned before, it's kind of the murder capital of the East Coast, if you ask me. Anyway, if you want Mort as your sidekick for your episode, read a book that's part of a series. So this could either be a series that you're already in the middle of, or starting a new series, whatever you want to do. If you read a sequel, the third book, the fourth book, the seventh book in a series, then Mort will be your sidekick. The next sidekick option is the legend Dennis Stanton. Now, Dennis was one that I wasn't super familiar with until our most recent watch through of Murder, She Wrote. He is the gentleman jewel thief turned insurance investigator, and later on in the show he does actually get a few episodes where it's almost he gets to run the show and he's kind of telling Jessica and thus us his adventures as an insurance investigator. He's like a very dapper gentleman. He was a jewel thief and now he's an investigator. He's just so much fun. So if you want Dennis as your sidekick, read a classic. Two really quick, fun classics that I would recommend: A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh and Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. These are both for younger readers, but both of them are just delightful stories of childhood and whimsy, and they just make my heart so happy. And they're not too terribly long, so they're kind of perfect for readathons, if you ask me. And the final option for a sidekick is Harry McGraw, played by Jerry Orbach, of course. Now, Harry always seems to be getting Jess in trouble. However, he is a really fun character. So if you want him to be the sidekick in your episode, read a book that features a detective. One that I really love is The Midnight Show by Sarah Pennington. This is like a fantasy mystery detective noir feel. It is so much fun. It's a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, and it's got a ton of fun magical elements, but also is just like a classic mystery. It's a good time. So now that you have your setting and your sidekick, we gotta decide what's actually happening in this episode. Who's the victim? Who died? The victim set of prompts is going to help you decide. I for this list, took archetypes that I remember happening several times throughout the show's episodes. Like, this is just kind of an archetypal character. It's not a particular person, but like, generally this happens a few times that this person is the one who ends up dead. So here are your prompts for your victim. If your victim was a wealthy businessman with a greedy family, you're going to read a book set near water. One of my favorite recommendations for this, one of my favorite books of all time, Navigating Early by Claire Vanderpool. This is about a boy named Jack and a boy named Early. They live in Maine, which is also fitting because Jess also lives in Maine. They basically go on like a river adventure. There's friendship and the love of stories, and it's a beautiful book, so I definitely recommend this one if you're looking for a book set near the water. If your victim was a reporter who got in over their head and may have known something they weren't supposed to, then read a book that features a newspaper or reporters. Another one of my favorite books, one that I'll recommend for this, is City of Orphans by Avi. This is a historical fiction set in 1893. It follows Max. He's a newsboy, and it's very much the vibes of Disney's Newsies, but like minus the musical. The vibes, the feelings are there, and this one is also a mystery, so this would be a fun option. If your victim was a producer who may or may not have been set to cut some members of the cast, your prompt is to read a book about movies or TV. Now, this could go a lot of different ways. You could read a book about actors or actresses, you could read an autobiography of your favorite actor or actress, or you could read a book that has a movie or TV adaptation. Two of my favorites in that category would be The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This has a movie adaptation, and The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart just got a TV adaptation on Disney Plus, and I have absolutely loved watching it, so if you were interested in reading the book, this would totally fit for this prompt. If your victim was a maid who overheard something they shouldn't have, then read a book that takes place in a mansion or a hotel. The first book that came to mind when I thought of a mansion setting is actually The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. This is the first Poirot mystery, and it's a classic for a reason. There's a locked room, there's a poisoning, Poirot is called in to investigate. It's all the good things. So if you're looking for something set in a mansion, this one, or also they do it with mirrors. which is a Miss Marple mystery, is also set in a mansion, so that might be fun. If your victim was a politician who had some unpopular opinions, read a book with mixed reviews. Maybe some of your friends loved it and some of them hated it. Maybe it has a very mixed bag of reviews on Goodreads, whatever. Read something that has mixed feedback. The final prompt in this category, maybe your victim was a professor who was notorious for giving out bad grades. And if this was your victim, then you're going to read a book that's set at a school. Obviously, this could be Harry Potter. That's kind of the first one that comes to mind, set in a magical school. But another one that I read pretty recently and really enjoyed was The Troubled Girls of Dragomir Academy by Anne Ursu. I love Anne Ursu's writing style so much. This is a middle grade story about a girl who is sent to an academy for troubled girls after her brother fails his wizard's test. And while she's there, she discovers some mysteries about her own country, makes some friends along the way. It's a good time. So if you're looking for a book set at a school, this is one I would recommend. Okay, so we know who died, but now we gotta figure out who done it. So who is our suspect? Let's take a look at the suspect prompts. Our first option for a suspect has to be Jess's niece or nephew. There are so many episodes where it's based on Jess's niece is convicted of murder. As we talked about earlier, Grady Fletcher gets himself accused of murder all the time. Somehow, I still don't understand how anyone thinks he's capable. If the initial clues are pointing to Jess's niece or nephew as the suspect, read a book about family relationships. One of my favorites, one that I will always recommend, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is pretty chunky, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of long, but it doesn't take long to read. It's very easy to read, but this one is of course about the 4 March sisters and their growing up and things they encounter along the way. It's a classic for a reason, so this would also work for a read a classic. And there you go, you've got 2 of your prompts knocked out. If the suspect is the victim's former business partner, read a book that's by more than one author. So something that's been co-written. One that I'm definitely going to recommend, and I will always recommend this book, is Peter and the Starcatchers by Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson. This is a Peter Pan prequel that centers around Peter and how he first discovers Neverland, how he first meets Hook, all those good things. It's all in here, and this book is so much fun. This one could also tick off quite a few prompts, so I definitely recommend it. If the main suspect is the new girl in town, read a book where the main character has just moved in. This is a pretty classic, a start to a story of characters in a new place, in a new town, doesn't really know anyone, has to go from there. So one that I read that I would recommend for this is Murder by Page 1 by Olivia Matthews. This is a cozy mystery about a librarian who has pretty recently moved from Brooklyn to this small Georgia town. There's a lot of peach cobbler, there's a murder mystery. The mystery itself was kind of just okay for me, but I did really enjoy the characters, I enjoyed the vibes, I really wanted peach cobbler really bad while reading this book. So perhaps have some peach cobbler on hand before you dig in, but you know, that's my recommendation. If your suspect is an undercover spy, read a book with a hidden identity. Again, this is a pretty common trope, I think, where people either don't know who they actually are or people are hiding who they actually are. There's a lot of reasons why an identity might be hidden in a book. But my recommendation for this prompt is Bluebeard and the Outlaw by Tara Grace. This is a Robin Hood retelling. Robin is a young woman. She and her brothers have this band of merry men. And the Duke of the town basically has this track record of marrying young women and then they die mysteriously. So Robin decides that she is going to marry the Duke and steal all of his riches. And an adventure ensues from there. I don't want to say too much because it's just a really fun time. If your suspect is a crooked cop, this prompt is pretty straightforward. Read a mystery. And the final option for a suspect is an up-and-coming actress. The prompt for this suspect is to read a debut book. Now, a debut is basically an author's first ever book that they ever published, so either it could be a new debut, maybe it's a newer release, maybe go to your favorite author's backlist and pick up their first published book. For example, Cinder by Marissa Myers. Cinder was Marissa Myers' debut, which I just find fascinating because this book is really good. I usually find that authors get better as they go, but Marissa Meyer started off really strong with this one. This is a sci-fi Cinderella retelling. It's a YA modern classic for a reason. I love this whole series, and this is definitely one I would recommend. Here's what's fun about this readathon. It really is completely customizable to you, to your reading taste, to how much you read, all of those things. You can pick a book for each of your 4 prompts and therefore read 4 books. You can read enough to make several episodes, and you can absolutely double up prompts. So if one book counts for more than one thing, you can totally count it for that. Like, Go for it. Go wild. Get creative. For an example of how you could double up prompts, because we just saw this movie yesterday when I'm filming this, so I have Poirot on the brain. Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie could totally fulfill several prompts at once. It's got an international setting because it's set in Egypt, so therefore if I'm reading this, let's say I'm reading this for the readathon, it's got an international setting, so my episode is set in Ireland. It features a detective in Poirot, so my sidekick is Harry McGraw. I could also say it's also a classic. I would consider it at least a modern classic, so maybe my sidekick is Dennis. Maybe my sidekick is both. What a chaotic duo. Can we imagine that? Oh no! It's set near water. It's actually on the water. So my victim was a wealthy businessman with a greedy family, and then it's a mystery. So my suspect is a crooked cop. Ta-da! An imaginary episode of Murder, She Wrote is born! Now I'm kind of sad we never got to see Dennis and Harry in the same room. How chaotic would that be? So yeah, that's how it works. I am so excited for this adventure with y'all, and I cannot wait to see what episodes you come up with. It's gonna be a really big fun game of mix and match, and I can't wait to see how it's gonna turn out. Please, 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 if you're going to join us for this, keep us updated how your reading is going. I want to know all of the things. Feel free to DM us on Instagram and Squeal, tag us in your Instagram stories. I will leave, of course, links to Heather and Nina's channels as well as their Instagram accounts down in the description so you can go and follow them. I think the ladies and I are also going to be filming reading vlogs, so if you want to do that, you can do that as well. Use the hashtag MurderSheRead so that we can keep track of everything and make sure that we don't miss any of your posts or uploads or whatever it is that you're doing to celebrate with us. So what do you think? Do you love Murder, She Wrote? Do you have a favorite character from the show? Let me know all of the things down in the description below. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe so you don't miss any updates about the readathon or my reading vlogs or whatever happens. We have a good time here, so make sure you subscribe so you can stick around, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!